like to now invite Arjun to please come online and share with us his project that he is completing.
Thank you, Anish. Thank you, Rizvi, for such an amazing presentation. Lot to talk about it. Thank you, Anish, Design Owl. Thank you, Srini. It is great. I think we're not doing justice meeting Srini over the virtual platform. Meeting him in person is quite exciting, and there's a lot of energy around him, and that gets probably passed on to you somehow. So today I'll be presenting a project which we've been working on for some time now. It's a project which is 9 kilometers from Bombay towards the east of Mumbai. This is the Art of Living Triveni Ashram in Pune. This is located on the banks of a confluence of 3 rivers. This is a Triveni, that's why it's called Triveni Sangam. This is a confluence of Ina, Bhama, and Indrayani. So this is the barren part of Pune, northeast part of Pune, where as you go towards the Maharashtra side, the land becomes barren, and the actual topography is all contoured with a lot of hard rock available. So this is a 300-acre site, out of which today I'll be just showing you around 30 acres, which has been developed currently. There have been other parts which have been touched upon, but not yet been developed completely. So when we got this project originally, client was actually looking to build something as a temporary structure. So we started with this small structure. So this was a doctor's cabin. So they have something called as Panchakarma Kriya, wherein they use all these techniques to vitalize all the human body points, and they have a proper professional doctor for that. But they did not know if it would work in Pune, in the ashram, what kind of a response they would get. So at that time, they wanted the small pavilion kind of a thing. It had a very tight budget. So what we did is we purchased these pine which was locally available because of Mercedes-Benz and Jaguar companies based on the industrial belt of Pune, where this material is in which the cars come packed. So this is actually material which is used for packaging of this cars. So if you see, this is all these nail marks on top of this. So we just rub it on top, and you think about the structure was that the complete structure was just bolted on this half-inch GI pipe. So the whole structure was sealed through that. There was no nails used to tighten the structure. And during this, I was in conversation with us about this another pavilion which they wanted to construct, which was mainly for the yoga asana. So this is a 14,000 square feet pavilion, and it is 25 meters by 35 meters. It has a metal frame covered with ferro cement on as a skin roof. So this just is ground on 4 points. And when we were discussing, so there were specific kind of requirements for the structure. So we went ahead and studied all the Vastu, what basically is required in Vastu, and we worked out complete sun movement, which the Vastu revolves around. And we were able to add a landscape around it because of that. So we were able to add a water body in northeast which already had depression. So we cut some on the western side and filled a little bit on the eastern side, and it was exactly situated northeast facing. And what we did is, because it was a ferro cement roof, we cut the roof in two, so the hot air could escape. Ferro cement being thin, it attracts a lot of heat, so the heat could escape through the void. And to naturally ventilate it or naturally cool it in the month of summer, in monsoon and weather, Pune is beautiful, so we don't have to worry about the kind of heat or anything it attracts. It is the summers, the 2 months of summer, which was a point of question, when they used to use the hall quite frequently. So what we did is we created a landscape which would attract passive cooling. So this waterfalls is a movement of water around the site, which triggers every time the switched on to pump the water to the overhead tank, and eventually falls into the hall periphery, which cools the hall on the eastern side. And this is the cut and fill is the part which we did. So this is the west. We cut on the western side. So so the curing of the trees could be done in the afternoon. So all the cool air, cool heavy air could travel down and cool this bottom. And on the eastern side, we have the small entry pavilion kind of a thing, wherein people passing by do not disturb the users of this hall if the doors are open. So it was a typical metal frame structure on which the ferro cement was casted. So to reduce the cost further, what we did is we connected we disconnected the four foundations, and because of that disconnection, and all four foundations were independent, and the ferro cement was directly tied on. So this is the kind of process which went through. So while casting also, we had to cast in a manner wherein the weight was added at a certain time, at a certain point, and then like a snail, you keep on rolling it up and getting it to the stuff. So the whole structure, when it settles down, it will settle, it'll try to push out the foundations in a simultaneous manner. And as I said, we concentrated a lot on the landscape because mainly for the pavilion, landscape played a major role because the pavilion was just like, and a roof on top. But we imagine people using the space throughout the day, some kind of meditation, some kind of a yoga or any kind of a course. That was used for multi-purpose courses, all the different kind of courses which they had. And our imagination was that if a person has to spend 8 hours within this, so what he sees outside should be as comfortable as possible. Because the region was quite harsh in the month of summer. Everything will dry down, everything, whole landscape will be golden. So the landscape changes the color throughout the season. Like in winters is different, monsoon is different, and summers is absolutely becomes golden. Everything dries up. And this water is also the irrigation water, the grey water, which is recirculated throughout the ashram, which keeps on filtering by sedimentary filters. So, even the entry pavilion, the client had an imagination of a grand entry. So we created a pavilion again for the entry, wherein they pass through a series of boxes where they miss their orientation by the time they are at the entrance of the pavilion. So a little bit about the construction process. So after we had completed all the ferro cement and the metal work, there were a few challenges we faced while doing the China mosaic and the cooling of it. So we did all this China mosaic as an insulation, as a weatherproofing material. So the cement didn't work here because you could not use cement wherein you had to work under it the next day. So you had to pour water on top to cure this part and you can work down. So lime, we introduced lime as a material, which also added to the insulation of the complete structure. And uh, after the China mosaic was complete, we also added radiant cooling in the flooring. So this complete floor is radiated with cold water. We pass 18 degrees water in summers, so which cools the complete floor which you're sitting on. And each pipe length was worked out in a manner that the water traveling time is equal to what the start and stop time is. And we also added this HVLS fan and radiant cooling system. So this whole system, if it works in tandem, all the doors can be open and you can use the whole system without any doors closed. So it can be a completely open system. And during this process, so we did not get the complete project in one go. So there was always bits and pieces which client kept on giving us. So while this hall was getting constructed, they said that we would need a large scale toilet, wherein if a crowd of this scale comes here, we would need a few toilets here. So again, the Vastu factor came into the use of toilets. So we worked out a method wherein we could have the WCs where it was possible and the shower area where it was not possible to have WCs. So we worked out this radial system wherein it gave a sense of courtyard and again the natural feel of the ashram where you could have the plants growing within the toilet block. And to cut down the cost, we used the oxide colors within the complete flooring and wall pattern to uh, bring down the cost on ferro cement. Like basically, you have to construct ferro cement and then you have to plaster it and paint it with something. So instead of doing that, we directly used oxide colors as the plaster form in the form of IPS and just played around with a few colors and created environment wherein it would be absolutely comfortable in even if it was not clean for a couple of days. This is a community based usage, so there are no employees within the ashram. The complete property was run and maintained by the ashramites, the people who used to stay within the ashram. They used to cook, clean the whole ashram, and they would have participants coming and being part of the course. So this is how the toilet looked once complete. And after this, there was an ongoing kitchen, a hostel block, which they wanted to convert now into a kitchen dining space. So we were involved in this as the placement of the roof and the way the whole building oriented it, because the RCC frame was already ready by the time we were involved in the project. So we added this traditional form of Pune, the Vada form, wherein it's open in the center and it's just beside the river. So you get this beautiful view and people can sit on the floor and have their meal, and you can have really beautiful probably these kind of effects in the month of monsoon. And we also added a small pavilion right beside it for the teachers dining area. So this was again with the same technique of the locking method of with a half-inch GI pipe. So this whole structure is locked on the half-inch GI pipe, and the plinth acted as a seat. And this is where the river runs across, so you could visibly see it. We created a small ghat ahead of the dining space where people could break out in the evening time. So the next project which we got after this was the Ashramite Housing. So 9 was an auspicious number for them. So they said that anything built in 9 is always a success. So they gave us a space wherein we had to make 9 rooms. So these were these 9 Ashramite rooms, and they gave a very small footprint for it, within which we had to fit in those 9 rooms. So what I did is we we put 5 rooms parallel to each other, and 4 rooms were skewed at a 20 degrees angle. So what eventually turned out was a kind of a cluster, which somehow uh, you know didn't look out of place, but at the same time did the purpose. And the width of the rooms are also just 12 feet wide. And so what we did is we gave the same volume within, so it's 12 feet by 12 feet, and it is on a twin sharing basis. So the next project was by an accident. So how the system worked is that every time they assign us for a project, they had to work out a budget, present it to the trustees, and then it was approved, and then the work was to start. So it's like hiring a new architect for each building. So uh, the client used to always, the trustee group used to always complain about a lot of ferro cement cutouts. Ferro cement, weld mesh and the chicken mesh come in a form of roll, and to make all these geometrical shapes, we need to cut it. So there were a lot of bits and pieces left around. They used to always complain about that. So I said, if you need to make a structure somewhere, I can probably create a retaining wall. So we worked out a method to create a retaining wall with it was just 2 inch thick, and we had these rips coming out of it. And at this point of time, the client did not even have a project in mind. It was just a round plinth of a certain diameter. And in this conversation, they said, okay, we need a hostel block on top, wherein we plan to have people from rural parts of Maharashtra to come here and have a youth leadership training program. They call it Wild TP course, wherein they train the youth for a month and they try and employ them somewhere. And so the plinth was also worked out on ground. So that's the kind of uh, uh, strength or the kind of geometry you can work out with ferro cement, that in compression it works beautifully, and the tension is just added where required. So this whole thing could become monolithic. You could connect the whole system, and this it is just on ground. Like this is a retaining wall. We filled it up, and on top of this, we started the foundation, and the mesh started taking shape. So this is a hyperbolic parabolic structure wherein it is curving on 8 different curves. And what it did is it created this very strong geometry, which uh, itself could sustain, and we could have very thin columns and a very long span. So we got a huge space in between, which could be utilized. Again, Vastu played a role in this because uh, you cannot have your head in a certain direction according to Vastu. But when you have round, a lot of the questions are answered on its own. The people don't question you much. So round worked beautifully. And while we were doing this, our structural engineer was quite skeptical about this failing in some manner. So this was like a key, like a notch which he had left. If it failed somehow, because it would start pushing from one side, this is where it would crack. We were happy enough nothing of that sort happened, and we were able to do the China mosaic on top of it, which tried to resonate with the landscape around. And we even added another pavilion ahead of it, so it became a ladies and gents hostel block. And the retaining wall then played a vital role. We raised it and made a complete bench around it, so that became a seat. At this, I mean, it became like a complete structure which was connected in all manner, which was not planned for. It was just thought of, and in that conversation, it went ahead, and eventually it got built, and it is one of the most experimented form of ferro cement you can say we've tried till date. And this paved a way. We added a toilet block in between. Again, the space given was a very tiny space while constructing this hostel. So what we did is we created a snail kind of a system. So the gents enter from the right hand side and the ladies enter from the left hand side. They're absolutely close, but none of them disturb each other. So only the outer walls where the plumbing used to run, we did in brick wall. Everything else was done in Ferro Cement. And we could not have windows because this was right behind each other, like we did for the other toilets. So what we did is we gave one skylight to each cubicle. So each cubicle had its own independent skylight, and that created another, you know, sciography kind of a thing of its own. And what we tried here is something like a reverse dome. So this whole roof was coming to a point where there were absolutely no columns. So we did a reverse dome wherein the whole ring comes in and it is tied at this level. And this is where it gets tightened up. So if this probably, this stress is coming here and getting distributed here. So if this ring is removed, the whole structure would open up like a basket. So it's a woven basket which the center is kept open. This is how the ladies' toilet worked out. And while all these structures were going on, the ashram was still acquiring a lot of land around it, because a lot of land was promised to them, but they had never got the possession of it. So the ashram never had an entry gate. And every time we used to visit there, we used to always have a conversation with them that we should, you know, have an entry to the whole structure, because or the whole ashram, because people used to just randomly enter through a small gate, and they always had this pre-planned notion of a gate which they have in Bangalore. Actually, right from the start, with the pavilion also, when we were in conversation with the client, they used to always refer to every project to Bangalore, because Bangalore ashram is already constructed. There are close to 22 ashrams around the world, and all look similar. All are on the lotus pattern, which is designed in Bangalore. And that's what they wanted to actually construct here. And that's when we thought that if they want to construct something like that, they already probably have the architect for that. So if they do hire us, we should try and offer something different. So we had a lot of structures which was made in the entry, which were already existing. And we were trying to stitch all of them together by adding interventions. So we had a pond in between, sitting area. We had a display wall wherein all the courses and what kind of functions are going on in the ashram. This was an existing canteen, existing office, and existing toilet. And what we did is we added this pathway through a farm. So people used to enter straight here, which we changed, and we added this pavilion kind of a thing instead of the grand lotus entry, which again spoke of a certain kind of scale, space, or a kind of feeling that you've arrived somewhere and you have to go further now. So it's like change of mode. You know, you've arrived at a certain point and you have to go ahead now in some other mode. So this is what we created. This has just been constructed during the lockdown. It was during the lockdown this was partially constructed. And then we added this beautiful yellow oxide color on top of it. So this was the idea. So this is where you enter from. And again, a sense of orientation gets lost. You are passed around a circle, and then you can go and park. And if you have a temporary thing, you can just park your car again. And this is where the pavilion is created. And we created a water body with its logo and stuff. And this is how it turned out to be. Like, this is the entrance where we imagine like you can go beyond, and it creates a sense of thought, like what is beyond. If this is the gate, what is beyond this space? And that inquisitiveness stays, and you explore the whole ashram. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Arjun. Lovely to see that work and the organic and ongoing development of this ashram. I know it's getting added on and expanded bit by bit, but it's lovely to see how you're able to stitch all these diverse elements together and layer this space to really offer an experience to the user.